Good afternoon, and welcome to this episode of the Add Drop Podcast. Well, you know what it is. It is time to get smarter. Also, Gundo's favorite son, the pride and joy of Cal State Northridge, also the managing editor of Last Word on College Football, Tony Siracusa. Tony, what's going on, my man?
I'm not sure it was actually the joy of Cal State Northridge. I'm not sure they actually enjoyed having me there when I was there in the mid 80s, but it's nice to think about.
Quick story. Do you think that because of just logistics, that a move down to like Division 3 would help the school?
I think they never should have left Division Two. Going up to Division One. There, Bob Heegert, who was the athletic director at the time, saw money in his field division. They had dropped football already because they really couldn't afford it. And back then in Division Two, they were playing the likes of UC Davis, Cal State Sacramento, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, Cal Poly Pomona, and the likes. Um, and they had oh boy, I'm going to say North Campus Stadium probably held about 6,000 people. Never saw it filled once in the
Yikes.
2 years I was doing the play-by-play broadcast for an NPR station there. And they had blueprints to build this huge multi-purpose facility out there, 30,000 people. Other than graduation, who's going to use it? Who's going to sit in that thing? Um, but they were so successful. Softball, baseball. Um, they won the conference championship in basketball when I was there. I'm gonna say probably my junior year when I was there. A lot of great success. Moved up to Division 1 for the money and haven't seen the light of day out of the school since then.
I just wonder because I was talking to uh, a conference commissioner from a D3 conference, and he
Hmm.
was saying they have the University of Hartford, which is in my hometown of Hartford.
Hmm.
They are moving from Division 1 to Division 3.
That's a big drop down.
He's like they
I,
just can't afford it anymore. It's just
I get it. I get it. We talked about revenue sharing and things like that. Northridge is not spending $20 million on revenue sharing. They don't have it. I'd be surprised if they're spending 10. The revenue sharing, while in theory it equalizes the landscape for at the larger level, at the smaller ones, you're not getting anywhere near that. Now, you still have money to put out there, or whatever conference money you're getting. Northridge with the Big West money for most of its sports. But I got to imagine they're pulling in out of the conference 6, maybe 7 million total per year.
as an outsider, people, and I still think that, like, don't realize how large California is. If you can think of every large city in California, they will either have a Cal State something or a University of California at,
Yes. Yeah.
and
Yeah. The
how big
UC
the
the
state is.
UC system is I'm going to say 11, maybe 12 campuses, um, and is the forerunner of the state school system in California. And frankly, a little bit more prestigious, a little harder to get into academically. Um, the Cal State program is the stepchild of that. And if memory serves me correctly, I'm going to say about 32 campuses
That is
up and
huge.
down the state. So yeah, it's and a lot of schools that you don't realize are part of the California State University system. San Diego State, because we just know it as San Diego State, but it is California State University, San Diego.
Fresno.
Fresno State, exactly. Schools that you generally don't think of as part of the CSU system. That's just because of what we call them, San Jose State or Sacramento State. All of those are part of the California State University system.
And Long Beach State, they mentioned
Yep.
Fullerton, all of the
Fullerton.
baseball
Yep.
schools, Fullerton,
Yep.
Irvine, places like that.
Yep. And Irvine is a UC school, University of California, Irvine,
Ah,
the anteaters. And So, but yeah, there's like um, Riverside, Cal Poly. I mean, all of these places, they're just all over the place.
they have a Cal State Channel Islands.
Do Do you even know where the Channel Islands are?
Uh, off the coast. Somewhere off the coast. I have no idea.
Well, sure, because they're islands, so that's a pretty good guess. Um, your education did well by you. They are just north of, and yes, off the coast of Santa Barbara. And so it's and the campus isn't really on the islands, it's island adjacent. There is the islands actually used to belong to the Chumash Indians. And if you are fortunate one day to go to Santa Barbara, and I don't work for the tourist board, but if you are fortunate to be able to spend a few days there, spend half a day doing the whale watching there. It is as legit as you could possibly ever imagine. I've done it half a dozen times, but the boats also go into the caves that are in the islands, and
Oh,
you can still see some of the old Indian painting on the walls and so on from the original inhabitants of those islands. It's pretty amazing.
and the UC system, correct me if I'm wrong, but every school has to have blue and gold as their school colors.
I believe that to be true. Yes. Yes, because it is the official color of the University of California system. And you can have different variations. Cal is dark blue and UCLA is what they call powder keg blue. Unless you're Ed Orgeron and you tease them for having baby blue before you go in and lose to them, when you're the head coach of LSU. Um, so there are different variations. UC Davis is dark blue. There are different variations of it. UC Santa Cruz, one of the great school nicknames
The banana
ever.
slugs.
The Banana Slugs. Yes. They used to be called, I don't even remember what. It was when I was at Northridge that they had a vote to change their name because they're whatever it was that their name was, the students were like, there is none of that anywhere near Santa Cruz. We need to have something that represents the area. And they had a vote, and the school was just absolutely embarrassed. The administration was just like, you've got to be kidding me. But that's what the students voted for. And within a month, I was a proud owner of a UC Santa Cruz banana slug sweatshirt. It was pretty epic. There are banana slugs there. It's a great surfing area. UC Santa Cruz is a great surfing area. Back when I was young and just out of school, I was thinking, I've got this journalism degree, but what I really want to do is go work at a surfboard shop in Santa Cruz and just be in my shorts and t-shirts all day.
That works. So, if we look at the last weekend's action, what was your
Yeah.
overarching thought about how the weekend transpired?
There are some. First of all, I'm going to give my props to USF, University of South Florida, for beating Florida. Not only did it put USF back in the top 25 for the first time in about 4 years, but all of a sudden we're talking about Billy Napier's job again. And they went from 14 to wherever they're ranked in any various polls. Um, I saw this poor young lady I know, Haley
Uh,
Sawyer. I know her. She's a local reporter in Los Angeles, and she did an interview as an AP voter about how she votes and why she still had Florida ranked above USF, and I think she didn't even have USF in there. And the response just got her dragged on social media, and I felt I didn't feel empathy for her because her answers were really bad. You're like, well, there's so many voters, it evens out, even if I get stuff wrong. And ouch, because the goal is to try and get it correct, not to just be random about it. Um, but anyway, so they're Florida and USF switch positions in most polls. So props to them. Clemson, still waiting for Clemson to show up. It's. I mean, yeah, they had a big win, but Cade Klubnik doesn't even look like the Cade Klubnik from last year. So, I think we're still in a wait and see mode on some schools. other schools. They had convincing wins against non-competitive teams, you know, Ohio State beating Grambling State, whatever. You know, yeah, you're still number one in my voting, but whatever. Not a lot to write home about there.
When I look at the USF game, a couple of thoughts. One, Alex Golesh will possibly get a probably a power forward job sooner than later.
Yeah, he'll certainly get the offers. Whether it's a place he wants to go or not is a different story, but he's certainly going to get the phone calls.
And his story, just his backstory is just you don't see a coach come from Russia to actually coaching in
Right.
it. But and the way that USF handled themselves when Florida's defensive lineman couldn't contain himself, he decided to spit. They had a 3rd and 8 where Vernell Brown, the wide receiver, wide open. Lagway hits him in his hands, he drops it. That's game over right there.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of inexcusable loss. One or two things will happen with Florida. Either they'll start to kind of pick up steam and kind of build from it, or they'll fall apart completely. And Napier will be gone before, probably before November.
Yeah, I think, look, I think Napier's, and it's not just the loss, it's like you said, the behavior of the team. There are locker room issues. I think, Mike Gundy, Oklahoma State, they got the beat down we expected them to get um, with his whining beforehand. It's not just that they got beat, it's that they looked really bad, really, really bad. They looked fundamentally unsound as a football program. And, you got to think Gundy, I don't know that Gundy lasts the year either. It used to be you didn't fire a coach till the season was over, you know. Now with the early signing period, the early high school signing period, and the portal in early December, you now, when it's going badly, you now take that step to kind of send the message, hey, we're not sitting on this. We're taking a move. We're going to try to be proactive. And so coaches are gone by mid-November now.
And Gundy, his evolution has it's interesting to me because one, he started off as just the come at me, I'm 40 guy, kind of loud, and just degenerated into just says the most asinine things about just going out and having a couple of beers and then driving and just
Yeah, we still haven't gotten over that from last year when Ollie Gordon got cited for his driving under the influence. And instead of saying, well, yeah, that's not acceptable and we're going to deal with it, Gundy's response was, hey, who hasn't had a couple of beers and gotten behind the wheel? I know I have. It's you know what? He used to be quirky. And I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's the difference between a winning coach and a losing coach. When you're winning and you say stupid stuff, you're quirky. You're eccentric. When you're losing and you say stupid stuff, you're a losing coach on his way out.
exactly. It's funny. As somebody who covers Auburn, they're playing South Alabama this weekend, and it's the lack of high ground bowl because on one side you have Hugh Freeze who can't pick up who should not dial a phone ever in life. Other side, Major Applewhite, who apparently
Right.
had an affinity for athletic trainers.
Right.
And it's weird to watch them quote about the moral integrity of their team
Yeah.
and
You
wanting
know,
to ask a question about integrity
yeah.
and seeing my boss turn 85 different colors of red saying no.
Yeah. It's I know that Hugh Freeze went to Liberty to reinvent himself, but what is it Angela Mayu used to say? When someone shows you who they are, believe them. It's there's just I don't need to hear about the high ground from somebody like Hugh Freeze. I don't need to I don't need you to continue to flog yourself over things you did in the past. I just need you to just let's just talk football and leave all the other stuff.
Thank you. Exactly. And it's just, I guess it might be a regional thing because you have a lot of coaches in the southeastern part of the United States who will get up there and speak these things, but then that night or 2 days later, you'll see him out in various bars being all Urban Meyer about stuff.
Anyone know where Mike Price is these days? After his 2 weeks at the University of Alabama. Yeah, look, I just I don't need the football coaches have a platform, and they have a platform from which they can opine on a variety of topics. And I'm not saying they have to agree with my side of things. I'm going to venture that a lot of them don't. And that's fine. I don't care. But when it comes to things like being so certain, and I think really that's it, the level of certainty with which you speak usually comes from an incorrect place. It's okay to say, hey, we should do this. We should treat people better. We should be open to this or thoughts on that. That's fine. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with athletes using their platform. The idea that shut up and just play ball or shut up and dribble, that to me is offensive. Um, because that is the anti Jesse Owens, that is the anti Jackie Robinson, that is the anti Arthur Ashe, that is the anti Muhammad
Kurt,
Ali.
Kurt Flood.
Um, that is the anti-Kurt Flood. So I'm okay with them using their platform for a bigger purpose. When you have a platform, I actually think you should, if you're comfortable doing it. You don't have to, but if you're comfortable, you should. But to say it with such certainty when your own past is so speckled with randomness, probably not the person I want to hear it from.
It's bothersome because it's that thinking they have everything figured out. I'll be 52 in June. I am still figuring out some parts of this life. And it's a learning process. And to speak from a position of, well, I know everything. No, you don't. And it's just,
Uh,
it's permeating. Now, looking at the games, I know you mentioned
mhm.
Cade Klubnik and
Yeah,
Clemson.
yeah,
South Carolina State, Coach Barry at South Carolina State, his team, I mean, wait, no, they actually played South Carolina. They played Troy.
right.
Troy picked off a pass on a pick six, scored. Klubnik, to me, as watching the clips, do you think, I don't know, it's something just not, doesn't seem right. Like maybe it's an injury, something.
I don't know what it is. He's not. Look, he got his time with Garrett Riley last year, and in the second part of the season, they really started to gel. I don't know why that isn't there right now. They didn't look good in week one. The offense didn't look good in the loss to LSU. Look, they did what they had to do against Troy, but there was a part of them that looked somewhat unengaged. And if you're unengaged this week in Atlanta against Georgia Tech, you're going to get beat. Um, we don't know who the Georgia Tech quarterback is going to be. Haynes King has he missed last week against Gardner Webb. He's got a lower back injury, although our understanding is he's been practicing all week. Haynes King gives you a load of problems because he can run the ball. They run the triple option offense or a variation thereof. He's not going to throw the ball downfield much, but he's going to throw the intermediate passes to keep the team moving. But you look at what Aaron Philo did in his stead when King was out last week, 21 of 28 for 373 yards and a touchdown. Holy moly. So he's actually probably a bigger downfield passing threat than is King. Um, I think part of the Clemson challenge is they've yet to show a run game. Look, I get it. You lost Phil Maffa, but you had to have something back there. Clemson right now, as you and I talk, is 127th in the country in rushing yards per game at 75. Um, Man, the lack of diversity in the offense is going to come back and bite Klubnik in the rear end. And right now they're missing Antonio Williams. He's day to day with a hamstring injury. They're wide receiver. So they've got some challenges, and none the least of which is having to play Georgia Tech on the road this weekend.
I agree. I think this might be a chance for Georgia Tech to sneak by with a close victory.
I think so. I think they absolutely could.
Because Klubnik I watched the clips and that game just doesn't seem right. It got to a point where Dabo Swinney put in a backup quarterback on a QB power randomly.
Right. Right. Which which I think is also, you think he's just trying to make a statement. I don't think Georgia Tech is looking at that play and saying, "Oh, we got to prepare for something else now, something totally different." Um, but it felt a little desperate.
Now, speaking of just desperation, sort of, I know, in a way, Georgia and Tennessee, you have a Georgia
Hmm.
team with Gunnar Stockton. I like Stockton's mobility. I
Hmm.
really do. A- On the other side, Aguilar he looks like he fits the Josh Heupel offense. And this might be the game that Tennessee beats Georgia.
Ironic, isn't it? Tennessee is better with Aguilar than they stand a better chance against Georgia with Aguilar than they would have with Nico at quarterback. Meanwhile, Nico's having to run for his life at UCLA every week because the offensive line is so bad. Um, the look, is Gunnar Stockton as good as Carson Beck was at Georgia? No, but he's running well, and the biggest thing is he isn't making mistakes. He's playing error-free football. He's not giving the other team opportunities. Um, and so, look, Tennessee has lost what, the last 8 in a row in this series. And most of the wins, matter of fact, I think all of the wins I think about it, have been by double digit margins. Um, so I'm not sure, like you said, Aguilar is playing really well. I mean, he's throwing at 66%. He's got 5 touchdowns. He hasn't thrown an interception. He's playing really well. He fits the Josh Heupel offense well. Um, but I think that Georgia has a chance to make Tennessee look one-dimensional. Georgia's rush defense is 15th in the country right now. They're only giving up 61 rushing yards per game. Um, so if you're Tennessee, you're putting all the weight of the game on Aguilar's shoulders. It's not to say he can't perform and perform well. And, you'd like to say it matters that it's in Knoxville, but Georgia's won 8 in a row, including the games at Neyland. I've been to Neyland before. It is a tremendous, tremendous game day experience.
Yes, it is.
But I'm not sure it's enough. You know, Georgia doesn't look like the dominant Georgia team. You talk to scouts like I have, and they're not salivating over Georgia's defensive linemen like they have in past years. But they're not being individuals jumping out at you as a unit, they're playing exceptionally well.
There's no body that the Philadelphia Eagles would like to draft from the Georgia defensive line.
Right. Because the
So
Eagles
that's how you
pretty
could
much
tell.
just they just spend they just send, their scouts down to Athens for 4 months and in January say, tell us who we need. There isn't that right now. But as a unit, the defense is playing exceptionally well.
Now we have Houston and Colorado, where Ryan Staub comes out of literally being the third option. We know it against Delaware, but this is going to be a fun game because I'm not sure what to expect. You have kind of Wegman, who saw him a little bit at Texas Tech.
Right.
You can kind of see tools, and you have Staub, who this might this might be one of the most fun, probably not the highest scoring or the most aesthetically pleasing, but one of the most fun games of the weekend.
Yeah, you said it. I'm not sure it's going to be a thing of beauty out there. It's I mean, look, Salter, Caden Salter, we speak of, who was the starter, who got a lot of money from the collective to go to Colorado. Maybe some of it was NIL money, whatever, but it was a lot of money to go to Colorado from Liberty, which is where he played last year. Um, and he's getting benched 3 games into the season. He's getting benched. He is 30 of 44 passing for only 261 yards and one touchdown over 2 games. It's wow. There just really isn't much there. Um, they had Julian Lewis come in last week to take a few snaps as well. He's a freshman. And then Staub came in, and you figured he was only going to maybe see a couple of meaningful minutes, but he came in with less than a minute in the first half, ran a version of the 2 minute drill, but did it in under a minute and got a touchdown pass with 9 seconds left just before the half. Um, and then he threw a 71-yard touchdown pass early in the second half. Was in the 4 drives that Staub played, he was 7 of 10 for 157 yards. Half of that was on one pass, but if you're Dion, you don't care if half of it was on one pass. You need someone who's going to move the offense, and Salter wasn't. And so, look, when Staub went in, Colorado was up 10-7, and Dion wasn't satisfied with either Lewis or Salter. When Staub left, it was 31-7, Colorado. So it's there's it's a strange move. And it's strange also because Dion has been set at quarterback for the last 4 years, the last two at Colorado and his two, at Jackson before that because of his son. So to see this kind of rolling of the dice, trying different quarterbacks, especially when you spent so much collective money on one of them, it's going to be an interesting game.
It's interesting to watch. Is like I really think this is one of the whoever has the ball last
Could be.
wins. Now, when we look towards Vandy and South Carolina,
Sure.
Diego Pavia, I know that it's still early and the competition may not be great, but averaging 10 yards an attempt is ridiculous.
It really is. It absolutely really is. I mean, he just looks big time right now. Um, Last year, he had a good year last year, right? I mean, we all liked what he, but I think last year was because he won some games nobody expected Vanderbilt to win. And who is this guy, right? You only get a certain amount of time on the calendar for who is this guy, and then you become the guy that people expect things out of, which is where Pavia is now, in his 10th or 11th year of college football or whatever he's on now after all of his lawsuits. Um, but he was in the 7 to 8 range in terms of yards per completion most of last year, and now he's just a tick under 11 yards average per completion. It's just mind blowing, um, and he looks really good. I mean, they beat up on Virginia Tech last week. By the way, let's digress for 30 seconds on the list of Gundy and Napier. So goes Brent Pry from Virginia Tech. Also, I like Brent a lot, but I don't think he's gonna, at the rate things are going to Virginia Tech. I don't know he's gonna last the season. But anyway, they blew out Virginia Tech 44-20. He's scrambling. He's throwing downfield more than he did before. Um, Look, a year ago, would you and I be sitting here doing your show saying, "Man, that Vandy at South Carolina game is going to be big"? We'd be saying, "What? Wait, who? Where?" Right? But South Carolina is playing really well. Lenora Sellers is a legitimate Heisman candidate. Pavia is second in the entire SEC. The vaunted SEC, Pavia is second in the total passer rating at 199.6. Wow, man, this guy is just doing it all right now. Um, and South Carolina, even being at home, they are vulnerable because they're terrible on third downs defensively. They are giving up third downs, conversion to first downs at an alarming rate. And Vanderbilt is among the best in the country at at picking up first downs, keeping the chains moving. So this is going to be, this is going to be tough for South Carolina. The offense has looked good, but it's going to be tough.
I see. This might be a game that Pavia continues to streak. I see Vandy winning this one.
I do too. I do too. And by the way, they both have played Virginia Tech. Common opponent already. We're only in week 3 because you remember South Carolina opened the season on a neutral field game against Virginia Tech in week 1. And South Carolina won by 2 touchdowns, and Vanderbilt won by 4 touchdowns. So there's that.
Speaking of South Carolina and Virginia Tech, is there any
Hmm.
way that Shane Beamer becomes the head coach at Tech?
I don't think so. I get it because of the family legacy there, um, and the legacy of Beamer Ball in Blacksburg, and I'll say that Virginia Tech is a tremendous place to go watch a game. Um, the fan base is committed even when they aren't good. The ROTC cadets are all there. Virginia Tech, I don't know if you know this, actually has 2 bands that both play. On the pregame, the cadet corps, they have their own band and they play. And then the actual school marching band, has their own section. And that entrance to Metallica, I gotta tell you, man, it is legit. I have been there for it and it is for real. Um, it's a great place. And Blacksburg is a terrific community. But you got to think South Carolina is going to do everything in humanity that they can to keep Beamer there. They are a big believer in Beamer ball down there in Columbia, uh, and Williams-Brice Stadium sells out every home game. The atmosphere there is electric right now. I'm sure if you're Virginia Tech, you make that phone call, but you're already on. By the time you make the call, you're already on to choice number 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 because you don't have a lot of hopes of getting them.
Agreed. And I like what South Carolina is doing just as an athletic department. They have Dawn Staley for women's basketball. They have,
Hmm.
and they're coming together. The administration just signed like a $70 million deal with Nike.
Yep.
And it's
Yep.
just the, they're getting smarter down there. And it's good
And I'm
because
and I'm a big fan of Dawn Staley. Love the way she coaches that team.
I was hoping that she would coach my Knicks. I was hoping. I'm like, just interview her. I'm like, I got some pocket
Look,
change. We could,
it's she coaches out of respect for the game. She's not smack talking people. She's not making it look at me, look at me, look at me like certain other women's college basketball coaches who I won't name at the moment.
Gina Orema.
That's it. I actually wasn't even thinking of him.
Oh, Kim Mulkey. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Not all about me or whatever. She coaches out of the respect with the respect for the game. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Dawn Staley.
Same. It's just, and it's funny watching her interact with, because she, being from Philadelphia, giant
Hmm.
Phillies fan, giant Eagle, the
Hmm.
giant, just her, the camera when she's watching a game, she gets so into it. She's in her fandom, just
Yep.
that type of happiness. USF and Miami. We talked a
Yes.
little bit about this. Carson Beck, I really think that further he gets away from Georgia, the more respect people should have because looking back on it, he was
Hmm.
better than what the headlines and the fan base thought.
Yeah. No, look, I mean, I agree. Um, you put it with an asterisk. They played Bethune-Cookman last week. But nonetheless, 22 of 24 passing is 22 of 24 passing no matter what. 91% completion rate or whatever that is, 91%. I don't know. They told me there'd be no math that I would have to do with this job. Um, but for the season, he's somewhere around 75, 76% completion rate. So, and that includes when they beat Notre Dame. So he looks really good. That having been said, USF is 2-0 right now. And I know this is going to sound weird. They don't have to beat Miami to be real. to be a
Sure.
legit program, right? Because they went through their first two games, they actually went through a stretch. They had 52 unanswered minutes of not giving up a touchdown. So a 52-minute stretch over the two-game period without giving up a touchdown. Now, you're not going to do that against Miami, and no one's expecting you to do it against Miami. I want to see South Florida stay close. I want to see them be competitive. I think Byron Brown, the quarterback, has looked really good so far. Look, man, they beat Boise State and they beat Florida. And it was that walk-off field goal by Mario Grammatica. And man, you can love having a Grammatica back in the college
Yes.
football kicking game, right? Um, but Brown was what, 23 of 35, 36 for the game. Looked really good. He's looked really good in both games. He can run. Stay close. Stay competitive. Because and you're not going to look, if you're USF, you're not going to look past Miami in no way, shape, or form. But that's what I'm here for. I'm here to look past Miami for you on your behalf, because after Miami, they play South Carolina State, they play Charlotte, they play North Texas, they play Florida Atlantic. We could be sitting here in mid-October with a USF team that is 5-1 or even 6-1, having lost only to a top 5 ranked Miami team on the road. So I play well, play hard, and represent yourself well. I don't think they're going to beat Miami. That would be the shocker of all shockers. It would make my job next week in my vote for the FWAA Team of the Week, through Cheese It. That would make it really easy. But yeah, I don't think they're going to beat Miami, but let's see how they play. Let's put on our analytics hat and just watch how they play.
They are fun to watch.
They
USF is
are
fun to watch.
great offense to
Byron
watch.
Byron Brown, it's funny. He runs well.
Hmm.
He has an excellent arm when he lets it go. That's it.
Hmm.
Like if he gets a little more accurate, I think mid-round draft pick. Just mid,
Yeah, I agree.
like has enough talent to make a roster.
I agree. Totally agree.
But they are fun. I think that USF will have a hard time keeping Alex Golesh. But they have money. They have a lot of money
They
for
do
them.
more than you would think. We think of money and we're thinking of Texas Tech and Alabama and Oklahoma and Ohio State and whomever else you want to throw in there. Um, but for a group of 5 school, they are up there. And look, man, they could be, if you're 5-1, 6-1 in mid-October, third week in October, like we're talking about, you're going to start talking about USF for the playoff spot coming out of the group of, with the guaranteed spot from the group of 5. They're going to be in the conversation.
I mean, their program is not really they're I think they're like 28. Yeah, their program is barely old enough to rent a car.
Yeah, they don't, their credit card isn't going to go through just yet. It hurts.
Exactly. Now, what's coming up on Last Word and how can people interact with you on social media?
Yeah, last word on sports. You go to the college football link and you'll find us on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter at Last Word on CFB and Blue Sky as well. Um, as you and I record this, we released our weekly Heisman poll of our cast of writers, and um, you want to guess who's on top?
Oh my God, why am I drawing a blank? Who's on top?
John Mateer from
Oh
Oklahoma
yeah.
is on
He
top right
yeah,
now.
he exposed Michigan's
He
defense from
really, he really did. And Michigan, by the way, this is one of the games where Moore is taking his suspension. So Michigan this week will be coached by Biff Poggi. He is back at
with
Michigan
sleeves.
with, well, presumably with sleeves. We also have our bowl projection
Yes.
update this today. So a lot out there. We've got a preview of the Wake Forest NC State game because that is the big Thursday night game on ESPN, and so we take a look at that. It'll be the first real test for Wake Forest because they played well. They ran up the score on Western Carolina last week. They didn't really run up the score, but it was a blowout. Damon Claiborne with 193 yards on just 10 carries and 3 touchdowns. It was a pretty epic performance, but they got to play NC State, big rivalry game, and it's only week 3. So we've got a lot of looks at this week's games coming up also.
All right, Tone, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Ad Drop Podcast.
All right, man, be well.